I want to begin just by saying thank you for coming today. My name is Lisa Smith. I am fortunate to work with the Washington State Microenterprise Association as the executive director. I'm an older white woman. I'm wearing a purple turtleneck with a black jacket. I've got blurred background. I've got blondish hair. And I'm just really excited to be here. I would love Cherie to go next and introduce herself, and then Gillian.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Cherie Reeves-Spare, a she, her pronouns. I'm a middle-aged white woman with dark curly hair. I wear glasses, and I'm wearing a maroon sweater today, and my Zoom background is blurred. Thanks for being here.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Gillian Marshall, and I will be assisting Lisa in walking you through this application process. Thank you.
Thank you, Gillian. And I also am grateful to have Jim Keogh, one of our board members, who's really a veteran in all of this. I don't know if you would like to introduce yourself, Jim.
Hi, I'm Jim Keogh. I used to work with Commerce and was with the state for about 30 years. I think I've been on the board for WSMA since it began.
Welcome. Glad you're here. So we are going to accomplish a couple of things today. And that is, first of all, we're going to walk through the grant guidelines. And then we're fortunate to have Dr. Marshall, who is going to really walk through the application process. She will have a slide deck, and we'll just kind of move through that process, kind of highlighting our expectations. And then there will be an opportunity for questions. I'm going to begin by going through the grant guidelines, and I'm going to go kind of step by step with opportunities for questions after each section. And then we'll go into the application process, and we are going to ask you to hold your questions while Gillian is going through her presentation so that we can gather those questions at the end. If you do have questions ongoing, or you don't want to interrupt me or whatever, you can put those questions into the chat, and we will capture all of them. As I mentioned before, this will be recorded. We will have this available for folks to review later. And there will be a way for you to, we'll be able to capture your questions and then put them into a frequently asked questions document for you to refer to when you're writing your grant. So without further ado, I'm going to begin, if that works with you, Cherie. I'm assuming it's good. Okay, so I'm going to share screen. And let's see. Now, this is kind of in the middle of everything, so I'm going to remove this from the top here. All right, now can everybody see okay without a big black header on there? I'm assuming that's going to be good.
We can see. Oh, the black header's gone. The black header's gone, but we can see. Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay. So you have all, I'm assuming, downloaded a copy of these grant guidelines. I'm just going to walk through it just step by step. If you still need a copy, it's on our website. We can help facilitate your getting a copy of it. But basically, we just want to, let you know that we announced this on November 3rd. The applications are due in our office electronically December 1st at 5 p.m. Now, I know how things go. We're writing grants and getting them in at the last minute, but I want to invite you to really think about what you want to say and write your grant early and give it time to rest and to breathe. And then go back and refine. Because if you submit it early, it makes it easier on all of us. But we understand things happen. You turn it in at 5 o'clock on December 1st, it's going to be fine. So just let you know that there's a table of contents that you can refer to different parts of the application. I'd like to begin just by reviewing I don't know if you can see that okay. The purpose of this grant program is to really help nonprofit organizations around Washington be able to effectively provide business training, technical assistance, and financing, and access to financing and tools for accessing financing in Washington State. And this would not be possible without funding from the Department of Commerce. So we're super grateful to the Department of Commerce for this funding and for the legislature, who has really had a lot of faith in the work we do. We have a lot of partners around the state that include entrepreneurial support organizations like all of you, community development financial institutions, or CDFIs. We have small business resiliency partners who are working with amazing organizations around the state. We have organizations led by Black, Indigenous, and other people of color, veteran-led organizations, organizations serving people with disabilities, returning citizens, LGBTQ plus people. And we want to make sure that whatever funding we provide in these grants is really going to serve a broad and deep base of entrepreneurs around Washington State. So this is just one grant cycle. We unfortunately are starting late. It was unavoidable, but we are starting now. We are working now, and wanted to just highlight a couple of things about this particular grant round. We know that there is innovation happening all over the state, but we want to make sure all of you know that programs that are going to be funded are for any business. So nonprofits that serve mom and pop shops or creative economy businesses or farmers, we are not prescribing any particular business that you want to serve. We're just saying we want to support the nonprofits providing this technical assistance and training to these businesses on the ground. And we want to stimulate innovation. We want to make sure social inclusion and works and businesses that are really working to be more circular or deal with their waste or their energy use or their operating their businesses in a more sustainable way, that we want to support your nonprofits that spur that kind of innovation. It doesn't mean you have to. It's just this is an emphasis area we know is valuable. And some of the sectors that we're looking at include agriculture. We know childcare is a real need in the state. So those of you who are working with childcare-based businesses, this is an example of a business that would be an opportunity for innovation. Clean materials, as I mentioned, creative and arts, musicians, writers, that creative economy, energy and efficiency, home building, construction, those entrepreneurs that are in the life sciences, those very small beginning businesses, maritime trades, small-scale manufacturing and tourism. Those are the emphasis areas for this particular grant round. I want to stop there and just make sure if there are any questions.
Lisa, we do have one question that I think you answered. It's about, is it applicable only for nonprofits? Great question. Yeah, and thank you for putting it in the chat. I can read those. Yeah, this is for nonprofit organizations that are providing that business technical assistance in Washington State. Now, we have in the past supported nonprofits that are chambers of commerce, and that's fine. We have funded nonprofits that are operating as economic development districts. That's also fine. So yes, nonprofits. Unfortunately, in this ground, we are not able to fund universities or colleges. And so I see there's a question, are these sectors priority? I'm going to get to that later on, but we will say that there is, I'm going to get to that later, but these are emphasis areas, and I'll go into greater detail there at another point. So grants under this program can be used for project-related expenses, rent, utility, technical assistance, training and outreach. I'm not going to read all of those, but it cannot be used for equipment, for vehicles, furniture, software, all that's listed in here. So if
or when you are submitting your grant, you're including those kinds of costs, those will not be accepted. Also want to make sure that understaffing, that we are able to pay wages only. So benefits and other parts of your staffing costs cannot be covered. That's a part of our funding agreement with our funder. So just to make sure, Gracie, thank you for that question. So funds can go toward wages, but not for benefits or other aspects. I hope that answered your question, Gracie. Another question is, are you able to fund nonprofit arm of a university for community programs specifically serving underserved businesses? If it's a nonprofit, we can fund it. So if a university has a nonprofit arm, it's a 501c3, it's registered in the state of Washington, then that nonprofit would be eligible. Hope that answered your question. Hold on one second here. All right. Are we unable to provide seed funding to businesses with this grant? Excellent question, Lynn. No funds in this grant round can be spent directly with businesses. So this is only nonprofit support for that training, that technical assistance, the financing, the coaching that you're going to be providing for the business. Great. Another question from David. Wages for contractor consultants as well as employees. Wonderful question. So in your grants, there will be a place where you're going to be identifying what consultants you'll be working with, what services they're going to provide, and how much. That is a consulting fee, and that is an eligible cost for these grants. Those are different than an employee. An employee is someone you pay as a staff person. You're paying FICA and withholding, you're abiding by the state workforce and employment security and labor and industries. That staff is considered a staff person. They are different. And David, I hope that answers your question. Okay, I'm assuming so. If not, keep putting the questions in the chat. Okay, so no software expenses are allowed. I understand. How about our WAN or Wide Area Network Agency Technology System? Oh, what a great question. Karen, I'm going to have to get back to you. We will put that answer in the FAQ. Excellent question. Thank you very much. And thank you, David, for just letting me know I got that answer. All right, so I'm going to keep going. If no other questions, as I mentioned, this grant is due on December 1st. Get it in early if you can. I wanted to go over some of the definitions just so we're all pretty clear about what we mean by urban or what we mean by rural. This grant round is available to nonprofits serving rural and urban-based businesses. And so those definitions are called out just for your information, but we're not dedicating any of these funds for any one particular community. There are some of you that serve a community, some serve a region, some serve like half the state, and some are statewide. It is okay as a nonprofit for you to apply as a statewide nonprofit serving the whole state and those nonprofits that are serving small communities. We are referring to communities like you, nonprofits like you, that provide that business training and technical assistance as microenterprise development organizations. And really, there has been no major certification of what these organizations are, but we are growing in our awareness and our capacity to better serve organizations like yours. WSMA provides training and technical assistance, grant making, and resource coordination. And so the nonprofits in this room, we are referring to as microenterprise development organizations. We've also referred to them as entrepreneurial support organizations. Sorry for all that jargon. Some organizations are like small embedded microenterprise development organizations within a larger nonprofit that does something different. that embedded nonprofit, that embedded MDO is fine to apply. So the nonprofit that doesn't do business training, but this small division does, would just apply as a microenterprise development organization. Some organizations are just starting out. They have been doing some business technical assistance. They did a little bit during the pandemic. They're not fully providing all that deep, intense business technical assistance. We would refer to them as emerging, and that's fine. We want to grow the ecosystem of business technical assistance providers. We have what we refer to as resource partners, and these are nonprofits and other organizations around the state that really focus on different areas or different life stages of nonprofits. For example, the small business development centers. There are more than 30 around Washington state. They have a specific emphasis area. It's our expectation that you folks know who your nearest small business development a small business development center is in your area. Almost every county has an economic development council. It's our expectation that if you don't know your EDC director or staff, that you will begin building that relationship. Almost all communities have access or are nearby libraries, workforce development partners. We know that entrepreneurship happens everywhere. And when we have an opportunity to work with entrepreneurs, they have different needs. The nonprofits that you're not in this room can't meet the needs of every business. And that's why we need to have really good, hearty relationships with the partners that are nearby. And that's what we mean by resource partners. A different way we have described collaborative partners, these are like larger statewide entities that are serving, again, a different sector. But these are just ways for you to know that there are other entities in your area, in your region, that are providing support to businesses, either with finding workforce or access to marketing or access to financing. We want you to be embedded and connected with all these partners. And then finally, microenterprise, microbusiness. Our interest, our emphasis area for this funding is for those very small, under 5 employee companies in Washington state. So you may serve these businesses and they may grow and they may have 6 employees. That's okay. We just want to make sure that the training, technical assistance, and financing is focused on this very small these very small businesses, and there are many, over 400,000 of them in Washington state. Okay, I'm going to pause a little bit. Any questions about definitions? Seeing none, I'm going to keep going. Okay, so as I mentioned before, November 3rd was announcement. Today is our information session. On the 15th, Cherie Reeves-Spare will do a walkthrough with the portal. I highly recommend that you go attend that. We've had folks go and watch it 2 or 3 times just to make sure that you're able to access the portal, get your applications uploaded, manage all the information, because that is how we're going to know whether you're actually applied. So it's really critical that you get connected with that portal right away. As I mentioned, the proposals are due by 5 p.m. We will notify you, yay or nay, whether you're funded by December 31st. And then we will walk through the process of negotiating scopes of work and contracts after that. It could be earlier than December 31st, but we want to underpromise and overperform. We will be doing mid-grant check-ins. They're pretty brief. Some of you have already been through them. It's just for us to make sure that where you are in your grant process is good. You're on target. You're getting the work done. If there's been a hiccup, we want to understand what's happening and help you through it, figure it out. And then June 16th, all of your work needs to be done. All the grant funds need to be spent. The work product needs to be done. Everything is done and complete. And your report, more importantly, is submitted into WSMA. it is critical that you honor that process. You're paying attention because we have to do our report for our funders. So that's where that all is. I'm just going to keep going. All right. So eligible applicants. As I mentioned before, we went through the list of the defined groups. Someone asked whether if it's a nonprofit that actually does work in another state, but also works in Washington, has a footprint in Washington, has a UBI in Washington, that nonprofit is eligible. We're committed to ensuring equal opportunity. We want to encourage nonprofits that are led by Black, Indigenous, and other people of color, women-led nonprofits. We want to make sure that this money goes to nonprofits that are serving businesses in rural communities, to all these communities in the best, most ethical and honoring way possible. Okay. One very important part of this work includes the work we're doing around resource coordinating with Evergreen BizLink. And if I was going to actually get feedback from you, I've had you all raise your hand. How many of you have heard of Evergreen BizLink? But what we want to make sure is very clear is that unless businesses around Washington State can actually find you, can reach out, can connect with you, the work we're doing doesn't really matter. And we are so fortunate to be able to work with Evergreen BizLink, which is a resource navigator. In order for this work to actually have impact and have long-term value, we want to make sure that all of you are on Evergreen BizLink. So if you have been funded in the past and you are not on Evergreen BizLink or you have not made an application, then you will not be eligible for these funds. So I want to repeat that. If you have never received funding from WSMA and you're not on Evergreen BizLink, that's okay, because there's an opportunity. If you get funded, you'll have an opportunity to apply and go through that process. However, if you have been funded in the past and you are not on Evergreen BizLink or you have not put in an application, then you will not be eligible for this grant round. There's still time. The grant's not due until December 1st, but that's how important this is. And why? Because we have had searches from cities and counties and communities that you have all never even heard of. This is actually working, and we want to make sure that businesses can find you. Any questions at all right now? I see. Thank you, Cherie. Okay, can projects be fiscally sponsored by a nonprofit? Jose, I'm going to ask a little bit more there. What I understand is, can a project like a business doing work or a nonprofit doing work be sponsored by a nonprofit? That's what I'm asking. And I will say that if there's an emerging nonprofit, it may be registered with the Secretary of State, but it has a fiscal sponsor, a nonprofit that is fiscally sponsoring that beginning or emerging nonprofit, then that is okay. But it's not a long-time solution. That's an interim solution. And so, yeah, I hope that answers your question. You can ask a more refined question if you like, or you can just let me know if I answered that question. Okay. I'm going to assume
Jose did do a follow-up.
Oh, great. Yes. Can a business be fiscally sponsored by a nonprofit? No. And I want to make sure I say that right. What I want to say is a nonprofit can contract with a business to help that nonprofit reach and serve small businesses. Definitely. That happens quite often. But the purpose of a fiscal agent is not to sponsor businesses, it's to sponsor nonprofits as they emerge and grow. I would love Jim Keogh to speak here if you can make that clearer, or if I'm getting that right.
I think you're getting that right, Lisa.
Okay, and Jose, I hope that makes sense to you. So if you are helping businesses and you're a business owner, you are not eligible to apply. However, if there are nonprofits near you who want to contract with you to help them meet their mission, that's a different story. If you currently do not have a 501c3 filed with the IRS, you must have a fiscal agent with a 501c3 or 501c6 to serve as your fiscal sponsor with documentation defining the relationship. So I want to just make sure that's clear. I'm going to keep going. Okay. So eligible and required use of funds. We know it's evidence-based that businesses that go through the process of learning how to write a business plan, they go through the process and understand how to get the formalize their business, understand cash flow, understand their marketing strategy, make sure that their operations are abiding by labor and industries. They've got their business house in order. They're much more likely to be successful and stay sturdy and grow and be solvent and prepared. What we want to be able to do is help all of you do that work better. So the three main areas we focus in are training, on technical assistance, and that's coaching, that's one-on-one, that's helping these businesses implement their business strategy. It's coaching. And then the last part is microlending, or helping them prepare to be ready for financing. These are the three areas we will want you to concentrate your grant writing in. And Dr. Marshall will be going through a lot more detail with you about that in the application, but just to make sure you know that these are the three critical areas that the reviewers are going to be evaluating as you move forward. Okay, is staff time spent underwriting microloans and eligible use of funds? In my opinion, yes, it is, because you are providing that technical assistance and support in helping that business get access to financing. And if you want to add anything to that, Jim, you're welcome to do that. So I just want to say this is a short contract period. We apologize for that shortness, but there's a lot that can get done in those 5 or 6 months. So just know that all the activities need to be completed. We're going to, of course, negotiate the contract, negotiate the scopes of work, get that signed, and then you'll be able to move forward. Any other questions on this section? All right, let me just see here. So would networking events count under the training category so we could help our startups attract new customers, meet new customers? Really good question. Karina, is it Karina or Karina? I don't know. But here's what I would say. If it's just networking events, and those networking events are not tied to a training program or deep training and technical assistance or some kind of financing, or the core of this really deep hand-holding and skill building and technical assistance, then that networking event may not rise or may not be as compelling in your application. If that networking event is about drawing more businesses into your network and bringing them into the training program or adding value through training, technical assistance, or financing, then it would be. So I hope that answers your question. I can go into more detail if you need more assistance there. All right. So I'm right here in the budget request, and I know how frustrating it is to apply for, let's say, $125,000, but only get $30,000 or $50,000 or $10,000. What I want to say is, I wish we could always fund all the nonprofits for what you're asking, but we simply can't. There's so much need out there, so much incredibly good work being done. What the reviewers can fund is based on what applications come in, the quality of the services being provided, how well you're articulating what you're doing, how many businesses that you're able to serve, what region you're serving. Are you reaching a diverse community of businesses? All of those factors are really critical. And it may be that you don't get all that you request. What we want to recommend is that you really think about what you can do in that 5-month period, what you have an experience in and expertise in being able to do in that short amount of time. How often and how capable are you reaching a certain number of businesses? Really land on an amount that you know you can do and have that reflected in the grant application, because that congruence about what you say you're going to do, showing how you're going to do it, articulating the details is really how those funding decisions are ultimately weighed. And so just to say, do your best in not expecting that you apply for 125, that you'll get 125, but do your best in tailoring what you're going to do with what you're really able to do in that period of time. Along with the budget will be your budget justification, which helps us know where you're going to spend those funds, how they're going to land with your consultants, your staff, your materials, etc. So that's the purpose of just helping us know what you are planning in terms of your budget. And then grants, I think we touched a little bit about this. I think I already covered this, so I just want to make sure you read really clearly this section. I see a comment in here. Do you allow the budget to include a percentage for overhead? Oh, what a great question. Beth, I'm going to get clearer details on that, include that in the FAQ. We want to make sure we're crystal clear, and if you can hold off on that question, we will make sure that we provide that in there. Unless Jim or you, Sheree, want to add to that. Okay, I'm going to keep going. All right, so this RFP process is pretty clear. We're providing this online application. This is translatable into many different languages. If you need additional translation services, please reach out to me. But this document, as I understand, is you can translate the entire document into a language of your choice in a language that you want. Also, the website, of course, can be translated. All proposals will be electronically submitted. So if you are not in the grant portal, if you haven't opened up your portal application until the day before, that's going to put a burden on you and it's going to put a burden on us. So I would encourage you, get that portal open and begin that process of just familiarizing yourself with that portal. Let's see. Yeah, we are doing our very best with a very diverse team of reviewers to make sure these decision-making process is sound and respectful and honoring of the applications that we get. For our drafting purposes, is there a character limit to the questions you can tell us about now? Great question. I'm going to wait for you to have a chance. I think Gillian is going to go through some of that, but it's all going to be detailed it's actually detailed in the grant guidelines right now. I think. Does that answer your question sufficiently, David? I'm hoping so. Okay. Dr. Marshall is going to be going through this, but I would just really encourage you all to think about writing what you're going to do as simply as you can, as clearly as you can, really detailing how many training programs, what kind of workshops, what subjects will you be offering, how often will they be offered. Really tell us the story of what you're going to be proposing. That really helps the reviewers understand how these funds are going to be spent and where you're going to be spending them. We want to know how many folks you're going to be serving, from where, how are they going to be impacted. Those details are really important because it's the expectation of our funder. I mean, I wish we could get around that, but that's a part of what our funder is expecting. However, we are also really, really interested in what you learn. We want to know, if you are, or how you are maybe measuring quality of life. Are you measuring the increase in revenue of these businesses, or are they hiring new employees? These are also indicators. We're not tracking them on the outcomes, but those are indicators that are really interesting to us. Are they going to new locations? Do they have greater confidence in their capacity to operate their business? Are they more stable? Is there more hopefulness? Those are other ways of describing the impact of your work on these businesses. So we want that information as well. We're counting these other details because they're really important. But if you have ways of, through surveys or focus groups, of really measuring and understanding how the lives of these business owners are being impacted, we really want to know that information as well. Okay. We want these proposals to be complete. If they're incomplete, we're just not going to be able to review them. We want to make sure that they're submitted clearly. There's going to be electronic signature in the portal. You'll all get that when you go through the review with Cherie. I know that there's extenuating circumstances. We understand that it may be that you can't submit something electronically. There is a possibility of doing it by hard copy. And just, we want you to read this section of the grant if that's the case. Okay, there's a question here from, is it Carolyn or Caroline? I'm so sorry. I think it's Carolyn Cummings.
Caroline. Hey,
Caroline, thank you. How much total funds do you have to award this round? And we have $2.2 million in this round. I hope that answers your question clearly enough. And I do want to say that last grant round, we were able to fund like 56% of the grants that were funded went to BIPOC-led nonprofits, and 26% of the grants went to rural. So we are hoping that we have as much diversity in the grant applications then as we do on this round. If you have any questions about the grant itself, direct them to me. This is my email. If you have questions about the actual portal and accessing that, go directly to Cherie Reeves-Spare, and that email is all over here. Okay, I'm going to go really briefly, oh my goodness, into this factors really quickly for selection criteria. Obviously, your official status is critical. Being an eligible applicant, as I mentioned before about having an application into Evergreen BizLink if you've been funded before. And that will, if you have never been funded by WSMA in the future, that will be included in your scope of work. And so you'll have during this period of time to do that application. Your ability, your track record, your capacity, your curriculum, all of your ability to provide this business training and technical assistance will be a factor that is considered by the reviewers. Your track record of collaborating with diverse communities and stakeholders is another factor that's really important to us in the planning and the implementation and the evaluation of your work. Your ability to actually track what you do, to document what you're doing, the metrics and your outcomes is really critical, because if you don't know who you're reaching, if you don't know the success of the entrepreneurs or how many folks went through your program, it's going to be hard to know whether or not you achieved your goal or your expectations that are outlined in your scope of work. So tracking and documenting is really critical, as well as those more intangible expectations. like well-being and hopefulness. Projects will be rated higher when applicants can effectively establish need and demonstrate the proposed program will result in substantial contribution to positive outcomes, job startups, business startups, job creation, etc. And so there's a section on the scope of work that talks about the economic outcomes. We're also going to be giving priority to organizations that have the capacity that are really doing this work at reaching a very broad and diverse community of business owners. And organizational ability to reach and impact geographic areas. It may be that you have a very small community that you're serving. That's fine. Even if it's a smaller number of businesses, if that's what you do well, great. There are others that have a capacity to reach larger geographic areas. That's also okay. But if you're serving communities that have never been served before or have not been served as effectively, that's going to be important to us to know. All right. And again, our hope is to have some of these funds stimulate innovation, social inclusion, and the use of the circular economy principles in these areas. And I mentioned those before. Okay. Selection and criteria. I don't want to go through this whole thing, but these are independently evaluated. Successful applicants will demonstrate the ability to understand what the businesses need, etc. I'm not going to go through all that. You can read that. Funding will be awarded based on the quality of the strategies, the demonstrated relevance, and the needs in the field. Okay, here are our expectations. Of course, we're going to execute a contract. You're going to submit a W-9. We're going to talk about your fiscal sponsor. We're going to have all that complete before you begin. If you're a new grantee, we're going to have to get all this paperwork so that we can make sure that payment runs smoothly. Every grantee, this is new this year, will need to participate and engage with a post-award 1-hour meeting. And it could be longer, but this meeting is where we will really help you, and you will know really what our expectations are in terms of getting the work done in your grant. And this is only for those who are awarded a grant. You will need to register as an Evergreen BizLink partner. It's actually a good thing for your organization. You'll have businesses find you that may not have found you before. You'll need to complete all the work within the period of time outlined in your scope of work. You have to show us evidence of liability coverage and insurance. And please let us know if there's an issue. If you can't complete the work, we need to know about that as absolutely soon as possible. Okay, I am going to end this now. We already talked about the report. Cherie, is there anything else you think I should cover before we hand it over to Gillian?
Yeah, can you check the note I just put? I put a direct message to you.
Oh, sure. Yes. Okay. So I want to make sure I'm clear about the grant round that is $2 million this year. I am so sorry. It is not 2.2. It is $2 million this year. Forgive me. Thank you for that clarification. Any other questions? Let's see. What is it? Pool last round. Ben, you asked a question. What was the 2022 pool? Is that the number of businesses? Yeah, I think it was. I think it was around 70. So it was. The reviewers felt as though the projects that were submitted were compelling. Not all of them were funded in the amounts they suggested, but that's where all the funding, that was how the funding landed. Another question by Karen was what is the funding source? Trying to determine if it is eligible to match federal grants like the Women's Business Center and SBA TA grants? Excellent question. So I would say there is not a formal match requirement here on this round. So we are not requiring it in this round. If you want to match with federal grants to in your other project areas, that would be your prerogative. Hope I answered that question, Karen. If you want to ask an additional clarifying question, please feel free to do that. I see another question here. What was the average award? I will find that out. Beth, thank you for that question. Any other questions? Wonderful. All right. So, boy, that was long-winded. Sorry about that. I could go on and on. Everybody doing okay? Awesome. Okay. Well, I just want to say, without further ado, how incredibly delighted I am with having Dr. Gillian Marshall be with us today. I've had the privilege and opportunity to work with Gillian Marshall for, I guess, more than a year. And she has helped us on several aspects of our work. Dr. Marshall has a background in public health and in social work. She has written successful awards, over $1 million in grant funding. She's been a principal investigator in research projects with NIH. She has done evaluation of multiple in multiple studies. And she's authored numerous peer-reviewed scientific publications. But what I really appreciate about Gillian, I'm going to call you Gillian, I hope that's okay, is that you really speak English. You are able to demystify and deconstruct very complex ideas in a way that's meaningful. And I really appreciate being able to work with you on this. And so without further ado, I just want to say thank you. And I'm going to hand it over to Gillian.
Thank you, Lisa, and welcome everybody. This is really exciting to see so many of you here. So my portion of this time that we have together is to kind of talk about your applications. So essentially, questions 12, 13, and 14. And the way that I've chosen to sort of construct this isn't just like going through the questions. I'm hoping that what I share today will be helpful, not just for what we're doing here, although it's geared for this, but I hope it's also helpful to you if you apply for other funding mechanisms in the future. So can you all see my screen? All righty. Let me get situated here. Okay, so the agenda for today, Lisa's already reviewed the funding categories, so I will just skip through that. I'll start with where to begin. How many of you have used a SMART goals framework before? Great. We're going to use that to sort of anchor what we're doing, and then I'll give you an example that I'm hoping will be helpful as you write your proposals. Oops, something is not working here. Oh, here we go. Okay. So these are the three funding opportunities. And from what I understand from Lisa, jump in, that you can apply for all three if you would like. But these are the three that are available to you. Okay. So phase one, where do we begin? How do we bridge to get to the other side, to get to the door here? I always think about developing a problem statement. This is going to be the narrative section of your proposal, really more around question 13. So describing the who, your agency, history, population you serve. For whom does this problem exist? Who has a stake in this problem? The what. What is the need / problem? What is known about the problem? Describe the why. Why is this a problem? And as one of my professors would always say, so what? Why should I even care about this? This really gives rationale and it gives the justification for why you're doing what you're doing. The reviewer wants to be able to see that. And then describe the where, which is your location. Where is this going to take place? Sorry, I'm having trouble seeing my own screen. Okay, here we go. So here's an example of a problem statement. Students at a middle school have low homework completion rates, lower than 40%, low performance on state math assessments, only 25% proficient or advanced. In addition, the community around the middle school is experiencing issues with unsupervised students after school. Incidents involving middle school students are up 17% over the last 3 years. So this is really the problem, not the students, but the fact that there is nothing for them to do. They're unsupervised, leading to incidents. Stakeholders, it is problematic for school staff, other students, parents, community, property owners, businesses. And then finally, research indicates that low math performance in middle school has a connection with low graduation rates, and that unsupervised after school time is related to increases in community issues. So this is the problem that we're looking at. And what you want to do is fix it. Not really fix it, but try to address it, I should say. So here are some key things to sort of ask yourself. What is the problem that creates the need for the training, technical assistance, or micro-lending access to financing? What is the problem or concern that you're trying to address? For whom does this problem or concern exist? Who has stakes in the problem or concern? So this is kind of how we're going to move through. So our next sort of phase is, what are SMART goals? Many of you know what they are, but I'm just going to do a quick review. They need to be specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and time relevant. And when we get to the example, I think this will make a lot more sense for how you're going to think about your proposal. So specific, you can tell who is doing what and when. We want this to, and so you're going to tell the reader what you want to accomplish and what actions you're going to take to actually accomplish the goal. We want it to be measurable. And this is where a lot of people, I think, lose points. There was someone that asked a question about having networking events. That's great, but how do you measure a level of success with those networking events? What is the outcome? What are you trying to get at the end of the day? So this includes activities that you can track and that leads to some sort of outcome. How will you measure? How much? How well? And how will you know that you've accomplished it and gotten to the goal? It needs to be achievable. So your goals should be ones that any reasonable person can achieve with your existing time frame, methods, and budget. Is it doable? Do you have what you need to actually get this done? Relevant. The goal accurately reflects your program's overall context. How does this goal align with the broader goal and the mission of your organization? Why are these results important? What does it mean for your community? What does it mean for your organization? What does it mean for the people that you're serving? And time related. If you don't have a specific time frame, this could go on forever. So we need it to be time related. So in terms of specificity, when setting a goal, we want to be as specific as possible. Think about this as your sort of mission statement for your goal. This doesn't have to have a detailed list of how you're going to meet the goal, but it should be able to answer some of these W-related questions. So the what. What do you want to accomplish? Think about exactly what you're trying to accomplish, and don't be afraid to give as much detail as you can. But because there's word and character limits, you want to be concise. The why. Why is this important? The who. Consider who needs to be involved to achieve the goal. This is especially important when you're working with groups and collaborating with others, as you'll see in the example. You'll get more specific about the question around when you get to the time, and where the question where the question is sort of where you're going to take all this action happening. So here's some action words I wanted to provide you with to kind of help think about specificity around this. So I always tell people to try not to use words like I'm going to solve, we're going to eliminate, we're going to end, blah, 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 because they're difficult to kind of measure and prove. So you're overseeing, you're developing, you're creating, you're improving. You want to see a reduction, you want to see an increase, you're going to effectively blank, you're going to explore. So these are some action words that you could potentially use. And we want this to be measurable. What metrics are you using to determine if you, in fact, have met your goal? The goal has to be tangible because it proves to your funder that you're making progress and that you're actually going to, or that you've completed the goal and that you've done what you said you were going to do. If it's a project that's going to take a few months to complete, then you want to create some milestones. So a series of steps along the way that, when added up, will result in the completion of the goal. And so again, we're talking about measurement, and sometimes that can be difficult. But I encourage you, before you actually begin your project, think about and have a discussion with your team about what you want to see at the end of the result. And it really helps to think about that and work your way back, because that will help you think about, well, how am I going to prove that we've done what we said we were going to do effectively? And then here's some other data types and data collection. The most common ones that people have used are customer satisfaction, in terms of interviews, in terms of surveys. I know Lisa likes to hear from the people that are impacted. So if you have testimonials, those are also really good to put in to your document to, state this is how we have met our goals. Achievable. This focuses on how important your goal is to you and what you can make it attainable, and may require developing new skills. Think about how to accomplish it. What sort of tools do you need? What sort of resources? Do you need more people? Do you need more money? Do you need space? What is it that you need to make sure that you can achieve this goal? It's got to be relevant. It's got to be meaningful to the program, meaningful to the community. A relevant goal is one that seems worthwhile, that is applicable to the community's social and cultural environment, and that it's relevant for the time. And then time related. So basically, we want to make sure that the time is realistic and that the time frame that you've set is doable and trackable. Okay, so we have a person bridging and you're able to make it to the other side, which is ultimately what we want to do. So here's an example to give you some context. GLM Social Services of the Pacific Northwest. Let's say that this is who I work for. I'm a social worker. I work with older adults. My service area is King County, residents 60 years and older. I focus on older African-American families specifically. Since COVID, There's been an increase of about 75% in clients. The greatest need is financial literacy and financial management. There's nothing formally offered at our agency, but I want to be able to apply for this grant to then develop a program. So going back to our problem statement, I'm describing the who, who this is important for, the why, the what, the where. And so here's an example. GLM Social Services of the Pacific Northwest, an established and well-known community-based agency. Since we opened our doors in 2002, we've served over 10,000 African-American families in the greater Pacific Northwest. We have primarily been an agency serving young families, but in the last 5 years, we've seen growing number, 75% increase, of older adults come to our agency for assistance, specifically around finances, financial literacy, financial management. We know the older adult population is growing, and by 2030, 1 in every 5 people will be 60 years and older. A recent article in the Seattle Times indicated that many older people post-COVID-19 are struggling financially to make ends meet, can't afford food or medication, and this is a growing public health concern. So do you see the problem here and the sense of urgency? I've given you a little bit of detail describing the agency and how they've had to pivot and make a change. Historically, they've served African-American families in the Pacific Northwest, King County area, but in the last 5 years, they see a number of older adults coming in and needing help. So they've made this shift with the demographic increasing and this Seattle Times article coming out, which is making this relevant now. We see the problem. So this is sort of a very specific problem statement. So what I want to do is I want to apply for the training funding opportunity here. And I'm thinking again of the specific SMART goals here. So my overall statement here is I want to offer a workshop and training for our older adult clients around financial literacy and financial management to improve financial stability of older adults. I'm going to offer 2 sessions per month, equaling 10 sessions of 10 people, equaling 100 people will be served over a 5-month period. 1 session will be a training on financial management and literacy. That will be 2 hours, 30. I'm going to have 4 speakers, 30 minutes each, and each speaker will need 5 hours of prep. 1 session will be technical assistance. I'm going to have a financial and credit counselor working one-on-one with each person. So this is what I'm envisioning. I need a team. I need to get my executive director on board, my manager. I need to find a financial planner. I know Tiara Barnes does stuff around financial and credit management, and I have expertise in financial literacy. So that's going to be our team. Our goal is to recruit 100 clients through my agency. So I'm just going to go through different charts and I'm going to see who is there and we'll solicit them and let them know that this is a program that we could potentially offer if we get funding, of course. And then we're going to partner with 10, and I will list the 10 other nonprofit community agencies that I want to work with on this project. So I'm going to be as specific as I can in this section. I'm going to measure this. So we're recruiting 100 participants. We have information about where they are in their chart. We want our clients to be financially stable, and it looks like this. So then you are defining what success looks like based on the training that you're going to offer. Once they're stable, we will see our clients reduce service use from the agency. That's the one way that we want to measure. We will need blank amount of hours for this project. The way that we're going to track this is I'm thinking about using a survey, interviewing participants. We want to have a check back point in 3 months to see if there's been any change. Since I personally don't know how to create surveys that are measurable, I'm going to put in my budget to hire a consultant for 10 hours to help me out. We will then create an Excel spreadsheet to track how often each person gets assistance, what type of assistance. And I'm going to ask our staff secretary if she could do biweekly calls just to check in and provide additional support to all the people in the program. So these are some other ways to track and measure how we're doing. This is all data. This is achievable because the team I've established has expertise needed to accomplish the goal. My executive director and manager have committed to fund 50% of this project. And with the funding from WSMA, we can fund the other 50% of the project. We'll definitely be able to measure the progress of 2 cohorts during this funding period. We have 3 locations and lots of meeting space. Because this training will be offered to older adults who are on fixed income, we want to pay them for their time. We'll offer a $50 gift card as an incentive. So we have space. We have the space and access to agency secretary who can do some of the sort of organizing thing, order snacks, make photocopies, make phone calls, text messages, reminders. So these are all things we have to kind of factor in and mention to demonstrate that we have the chops to do this. Relevant. So relevant. We know the stats. We know that by 2030, 1 out of 5 people will be 60 years and older. We also know that this is relevant because we've seen an increase in the last 3 years of older adults trying to access services with us. As an organization, again, we're pivoting to make these changes to accommodate the population in our community. The Seattle Times also makes this relevant because of the article that they wrote. And this being viewed as a crisis and public health concern is also what makes this relevant. So you don't have to be a major researcher. Use things around you that really speak to why this is important, why this is timely, why this is relevant. It will get the reviewer's attention because A, it is timely, but B, you've taken the time to learn and explain and demonstrate why. And then time relevant, this project will take place from January to May 2024. We're going to conduct aggressive recruitment efforts during January and February. By the end of May 2024, we would have enrolled and served 100 people in the program. We will have completed blank number of trainings with blank number of clients. We will have completed blank one-on-one sessions with blank number of clients, and 50% of clients will have achieved financial stability and success by however you've defined success. So that's all I have. I hope that was kind of helpful, sort of helpful, maybe helpful. And then here's my contact information. And we can open it up for questions.
Gillian, thank you so much. I really appreciate just how thorough that was and how you didn't speed right through. Lots of appreciation in the chat for this. Any questions for what Gillian covered in that slide deck? Oh, great. So good. I feel like I became a grant writer right now. That's great.
Thank you, Jay.
Any questions that you can ask of Gillian that would be helpful in this moment? We are available and we have time for questions. So Gillian, I had a question. Here's one. So one thing I'm super excited about is hiring researcher researchers to help us, but I wonder what happens when we don't have that vendor lined up in time for that grant purpose. And that's always a really hard question. Go for it, Gillian. I can hop in there.
Yeah, I mean, couldn't you just put the person in as a placeholder if you haven't identified who they are? You can say, whatever you think that they're going to consult on and help, you can budget in how many hours you think it will be, describe the exact tasks of what you think you might need, and just say, and we'll be in consultation for other related services or something like that. That would be my thought. Is that allowed in this proposal, Lisa?
I would like to make sure I would like to make sure that we answer that question really well. And I'm going to do that in the FAQ.
Okay.
But I do think it's important to know who does do this kind of research. There are firms that focus on this. They're kind of pricey, but there are consultants who do this work. So it's a great question. Another one is, would it be reasonable to get help to learn the skills to give microloans when we haven't in the past, and ask for a microloan? We especially serve artists and cultural workers. So, Che, I'll just say that there are several microlenders in Washington State that you can send the entrepreneurs you're serving over to these microlenders who can offer that microloan. You can help them get ready and then hand that over. If your nonprofit wants to become a microlender, there are absolutely steps you can take to become an SBA microlender, a USDA microlender, or a microlender with private funds. So that is always available to you. And if you want to reach out to me, I'd be glad to support you in getting to that place. David, I have to leave. Okay, great. No problem. Any other questions? Great. Gillian, what I wanted to just ask you in your experience and knowing the kind of work we do, like, how do you help people? How would you recommend folks do their answers? Do you recommend taking all of the possible characters that they can to describe, or to describe in more efficient or smaller but clearer sentences? Like, what is your best insight about that?
Yeah, I would recommend using the framework that we just reviewed and just writing as much as you can. And then when you have like a couple of pages, then go back over it and link it to each question. Because I think what feels overwhelming is when you look at the question and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't even know where to start. But if you know stuff about your agency and you know what the need is, breaking it up into smaller sections and then going back to creating the narrative, I think is the easiest way. And I know that's the way that I've been taught, and that's the way that I have worked and been very successful, because there's some key things you need to put in there. You want to be able to talk about impact, but you can't talk about impact if you can't talk about measurement. And so that is really important. And so I would say chunk it out into smaller pieces and then go back.
That is really helpful. And I appreciate that. I think that having time to really let that writing marinate and breathe, and going back and testing, is it specific? Is it measurable? Is it timely? Is there a time-bound aspect to it? Really helps that final proposal really look good and really sound good.
Yeah.
I wanted to, well, go ahead.
I was just going to say really quickly, I think people that are really successful grant writers spend 30 minutes a day working on the proposal. So if I would encourage everybody here, if you could carve out, 30 minutes in the morning before you get started and just do a brain dump and write, or you've read something and you want to connect it, just 30 minutes. By the end of the 3 weeks when this is due, you will have so much information to kind of pull together. But if you just try to sit there and write it like 2 or 3 days before, it's harder, and you don't get the kind of quality that you would had you just carved out 30 minutes a day to write.
I think that is really sound advice. And I also wanted to just pin to that, the power of doing this in Google Docs or in Word, and really, editing and going back over and over and over. And once it's done, then just copy and paste that and put it into the portal, because you'll want to do that editing and evaluating in that document before you put it into the actual application in the portal. I wanted to go back and just make sure that I was clear with the question that Shay asked, and that was for microloans. I don't recommend you ask for funds for microloans, because we will not be able to fund any business with any funding at all. All of the funds that we have in this grant round will need to go directly to the nonprofit. And so, but if you are helping that business prepare for a loan, or if you're helping to provide technical assistance, then those are all eligible activities under this grant. So just to make sure I tie that up with a bow and make sure that's clear, it's really important to me. I don't have anything more. Jim, would you add any more detail to this? Or Gillian?
Not for me.
I don't have anything either, Lisa.
Awesome. If there are no questions from this group, I want to say thank you so much for coming today. I encourage you to register for next week's grant portal walkthrough. We have so many people go back and just make sure they can follow it. And we want to say thank you to all of you. We're excited. We can't wait to reach your proposals. If you have any questions in between now and then, send them to me. We will put them in the FAQs. All right. Without further ado, have a great afternoon. You got 10 minutes left of your day.